Some moments in ancient scripture feel different. Not louder, not more dramatic, but somehow heavier. There is a quiet density to them, a stillness that seems to settle over the narrative as if the story itself were pausing to breathe before something irreversible begins to unfold. Across different books of the Bible, separated by centuries, landscapes and voices, certain passages appear with the same quiet weight. They do not introduce themselves. They do not explain what is coming next. They offer no dramatic signal that history is about to shift. And yet, when read slowly, they seem to stand at the threshold of moments that transform everything that follows. For generations, readers have focused on visible events, the journeys across wilderness, the sudden revelations, the turning points that reshape entire destinies. But what if the deeper signal is not only contained within the event itself, but within the silence that appears just before it? What if the stillness is not empty, but intentional? In the ancient world, silence was never meaningless. Silence was not absence, it was preparation. A space in which attention could gather, a pause in which expectation could quietly form, a horizon where the unseen could begin to approach the visible. Ancient writers understood something subtle about the human heart and the human mind. True transformation is rarely announced loudly. More often, it arrives quietly, first as a feeling, then as a shift in awareness, and only later as an event that can finally be named. Because of this, meaning in ancient texts is carried not only through words, but through rhythm, through repetition, through the careful placement of stillness inside the movement of the story. And when we begin to read slowly enough to notice these spaces, a subtle pattern begins to emerge, not suddenly, not dramatically, but patiently. Different stories, different generations, different landscapes shaped by memory and hope. And yet the same quiet atmosphere returns. A slowing of the narrative, a gathering of silence, a moment suspended between uncertainty and revelation. Nothing spectacular seems to occur in these passages. No miracle interrupts the silence. No voice explains what is about to happen. Only a pause. But it is precisely within that pause that transformation begins to take root, like a seed beneath the soil, invisible, silent, yet already alive with change. These writings were not first encountered as silent lines on a page. They were spoken aloud, shared in community, remembered through sound, rhythm, and repetition. In such a world, patterns were not decoration, they were guidance. A returning phrase signaled importance, a slowing cadence invited reflection. A silence within speech became as meaningful as the words themselves. The listener did not rush forward. The listener waited, because waiting was part of understanding. Modern reading often seeks speed, clarity, immediate explanation. We search for conclusions before allowing the question to fully unfold. But ancient texts resist this urgency. They invite a different posture, one of patience, of attentiveness, of willingness to remain inside uncertainty without forcing it to resolve too quickly. When approached in this slower way, the quiet passages before change begin to feel illuminated from within. Some scholars describe these recurring silences as intentional literary design structures meant to guide emotional and spiritual attention. Others understand them as echoes of oral tradition, where repetition and pause served as tools of memory and meaning. And still others simply observe the pattern without attempting to define it, recognizing that mystery itself may be part of the message. There are interpretations, but no single conclusion. Only an open doorway inviting deeper reflection. Beyond history and scholarship, there is something profoundly human in the moment before transformation, a quiet hesitation before decision, a still breath before courage, a fragile awareness that life is about to shift, even if we cannot yet see how. These passages preserve that universal feeling, allowing readers across centuries to encounter the same emotional threshold. Not as spectators of the past, but as participants in a timeless human experience. Every life contains such moments. Moments where nothing seems to happen, and yet everything is quietly rearranging itself. Moments where the future stands just beyond perception, waiting for the courage of the present to take a single step forward. If meaning is shaped not only by events but by the silence that surrounds them, then these quiet passages hold a significance easy to overlook yet impossible to replace. They do not reveal hidden secrets. They do not demand belief. Instead, they prepare perception. They slow the reader, deepen awareness, create space for insight to emerge gently rather than forcefully. And in a world that moves quickly, such spaces of stillness may be more necessary than ever. Because without stillness, nothing can truly be seen. And without waiting, nothing meaningful can truly begin. Once this pattern is noticed, familiar stories begin to feel different. Not rewritten, not replaced, but quietly illuminated, as though a soft light had always been present, waiting patiently for the reader to recognize it. The transformation was never sudden. It was growing silently within the stillness all along. And perhaps this is the deeper invitation hidden within ancient scripture, not simply to observe change, but to learn how to wait for it. To recognize the sacredness of moments that appear empty, yet are secretly filled with becoming. Perhaps the most powerful moments in ancient scripture are not only the ones where everything visibly changes, but the quiet passages that appear just before the change begins. If we learn to read slowly enough, to listen carefully enough, to remain present inside the silence rather than escape it, we may begin to perceive what was always there, waiting without urgency, waiting without noise, waiting to be seen by eyes willing to pause. And once such awareness arrives, the story may never feel the same again, because the silence before transformation is not empty. It is the place where meaning gathers strength. It is the space where courage begins to breathe. It is the hidden threshold between what has been and what is about to become. And somewhere, even now, within the quiet moments of your own life, such a threshold may already be forming, unseen, unannounced, yet quietly preparing to open. So a final question remains, not only about ancient scripture, but about the story still unfolding within you. Can you recognize the silence that appears just before something greater begins to change everything?